I think this week's episode is probably going to be the best one we've ever had.
Well, frankly, you started it off by talking to yourself.
I think you're kind of crazy. What makes you say that? You're crazy.
Welcome back to Alcohol and Anime Night. It's great to have everybody back. My name's Scott, and we're here to review some anime. If you don't know how the show works, basically, I review an anime, we talk about alcohol, and we talk about a little bit of just kind of random things about the anime world. It's my ramblings. We try to keep it short, but it's always a fun time for me to have an opportunity to talk with you guys about one of my favorite subjects. And this week's anime, to get straight into it, is Boku wa Tomodachi ga Sukunai, which you may also see listed on places like Crunchyroll and other places as Haganai. The loose translation is basically, I don't have many friends. Tomodachi being the word friend. If you might have heard that before. And it's a really fun anime. It came out in, I believe, the fall of 2011. It's a harem slash comedy slash ecchi style. So that means there's a whole bunch of characters in there. It very much has a visual novel type feel to it, which I want to talk about a little bit later too, and kind of talk about another thing as well. Visual novels have a very strong influence these days on anime and different types of media, which is pretty cool. This series has gone on. It did a season 1, which was 12 episodes, did an OVA, and it did a season 2, which I have not yet seen, simply called Boku wa Tomodachi ga Sukunai Next, which, because of the way they actually, NEXT, the way they did it, a lot of people actually missed out on kind of the initial release date, and they would search for season 2, but because it was listed as Next, it kind of flew. This season, this show has had a live action, it's had a light novel, it's had manga, it's had anime, OVA, and it really has a lot. It's out there a lot in the media, so that's pretty cool. I've not yet seen the live action either. Every time I see that there's something that's a live action, I'm like, oh man, do you know how many things are on my anime list to watch? And now you're going to add the live action to it as well. So I always laugh because it's one of those first world problems that we all laugh about. But it's a really great show, one I recommend. It's another one of these shows that can kind of how should I say, it kind of baits you in with, like, hey, it's going to be this kind of raunchy, ecchi comedy, and it is, but this story is really about being an outsider, and especially in a place like Japan, which you may have heard the kind of cliche that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. That's kind of the English translation for it. And really just means that those who don't fit to the conformity oftentimes are either cast aside or forced to conform. And there's some positive and negative things that you can say about that thing, because there are obviously different social norms. But this plays into the fact that if you look different, if you act different, if you have unusual tastes, that can put you as an outsider. Now, a lot of people may not realize this, and in fact it might be shocking to some people but being a fan of, say, anime and manga in Japan, outwardly having that be kind of your thing isn't a cool thing. It's not a thing where in America you can be, you can have a normal everyday job, but certainly be into anime and stuff. People are like, oh, cool, that's your thing. It'd be like being into Star Trek or Star Wars or anything like that, comic books, whatever it is. We have a much more accepting culture when it comes to things like that, because everybody has, just super bizarre things they're into. And although anime manga is super popular, it's not something where everybody necessarily broadcasts it. You're not going to see a lot of... In fact, I don't know if I ever saw anybody besides Americans walking around that had like anime shirts or anything like that. That'd be something you do in the privacy of your own home. They certainly sell a lot of them, but people aren't necessarily walking around and outside of conventions and stuff like that, or maybe visiting those stores or something like that. So very interesting. A lot of people don't know that. But anyway, many of the characters in this particular series are outsiders like that. They are what they would call otaku. We, again, here in America, we use it as kind of almost a term of endearment, like nerd or geek, where it is not a term of endearment there. It is an insult. And otaku quite literally means you just stay at home. You're just a homebody. You're just a kind of a antisocial type thing, which may be true about a lot of people, but it is certainly meant as it has a negative connotation. Some people have taken it and turned it into a term of endearment, but that's very Western in its type of in its interpretation. So anyway, this story revolves around our protagonist Kodaka, who is a recent transfer student. Surprise, surprise, a transfer student is coming in. But Kodaka is coming into the St. Chronica's school, and he's either transferring back to the area or transferring into the area. I believe he's transferring back into the area. I think he lived there when he was young. It's been a while since I saw the first episode. And his mother is English, and his father's Japanese, so he actually has kind of like a dirty blonde hair. Now that alone makes him stand out, and there are people who, especially boys who want to try and be, the outsider, kind of be the cool guy, the tough guy. They'll dye their hair blonde. It's very much an antisocial type thing, because a blonde-haired Japanese man is going to really stand out. And it's not his fault. He's not dyeing his hair. That's his natural hair because his mother is English. And so right off the bat, and he has kind of, he's not a very social guy, so the combination of his hair being blonde, and he has kind of this bad, he's not really good talking to people. People are terrified of him. They assume that he is some kind of a violent, terrible person. And again, that's not a cool thing. That's not like you're like the bad boy. It's completely antisocial. Like people they just want to stay away from you. They don't want to be involved with you at all. And so all these rumors spread about him, and he has no friends. And he comes across another character, Yozora. And Yozora, he comes across her, and she's literally talking to an imaginary friend. And this all takes place in high school, if that makes sense. It's it's like almost like a Catholic school, from what I can tell. And she's having a real conversation with an imaginary friend, which is obviously presented as comedy, but from the kind of the real world side of it, it's kind of one of the like nervous laughter, like, oh, this person has damage. And so those two get together, have a conversation, and basically decide that they're going to create a club, as many Japanese schools do, and many schools do, private schools do, called the Neighbors Club, which is basically to help them make friends. And basically everybody is welcome kind of thing. And so they put up these flyers. Again, no spoilers, it all happens in kind of episode 1. So one of their first members is another main character named Senna. And Senna is like the most beautiful girl in the school. She is like the perfect, she's good at academics, she's good at sports, she's beautiful, all the boys pine over her, but she has an absolutely awful personality, which again, some people can relate to some of these characters or people that they've encountered that are like this. So this absolutely beautiful girl comes in there, and she comes into the club room, and they're like, what are you doing here? You must have tons of friends. And then they really soon discover that, again, her personality drives people away. She's very wealthy, all these things, and so she really learns a lot from this, friends club, this neighbors club. But Yozora, who was the first character who was talking to, had the imaginary friend, she has an awful personality as well. And again, all of these characters have bad personality traits, which very likely is why they don't have friends. And so they're trying to learn to overcome these things. And so like Yozora, she's mean. She literally calls Senna Niku. Niku being the Japanese word for meat, because Senna has endowments that, so she just calls her basically like a piece of meat, like Niku, and never calls her by her real names, just constantly calls her. That makes her cry all the time. And again, this is a comedy, but the deeper meaning here is that, like, you might have to do some self-reflection to see why you don't have friends. You might have to see that, oh, this is partly my fault, perhaps, that I don't have friends, and this is part of the journey they go on, realizing their own psychoses, learning how to deal with people, taking in people who have those kind of unusual proclivities. And so I don't want to ruin all the characters, because it's a fun journey going through it, and how they all deal it. So it feels like a harem comedy because a lot of the characters do have an affection towards Kodaka, who are our main character, but it's done in a way where I think they don't understand their feelings so much, and so they understand that feeling as love, not so much in a friendship way, and they're confused about those feelings sometimes. But it's a fun show. The first season's great. I haven't checked out the OVA yet. It's only like 12 minutes, so I probably should have done it before I did this review. So anyway, check that one out. I really think you're gonna like it. It goes really fast, and there's not anything particularly. As far as some of the plot points, some of those are tropes within different animes, but the concept of finding friends and realizing your own psychoses and faults and maybe trying to modify and change those to become a better person, self-growth type thing, that is, in my opinion, a little unique here. So again, what we find a lot of times is there's a deeper meaning to the, yes, there's funny things, yes, there's boobies, yes, there's inappropriate comedy that'll make you laugh, but in some ways that's kind of the fuel that gets you through the ultimate concept that's in there. So definitely recommend it. It's got a really fun theme song that kind of just like gets you going. It's got kind of a boppy theme song. But check that one out, and I think you'll really like it. Absolutely. Now, I mentioned earlier that it was based on a visual novel, and I wanted to kind of tie in a little bit there. If you don't know what a visual novel is, it's essentially a comic book that's done through the computer, oftentimes online or on a disc. They sell a lot of them for like the PlayStation 2 and 3. I don't know how many of them are out yet for the newest one, but you play it like a game sometimes. Oftentimes there's some decisions you have to make. So it might be like a choose your own adventure thing that can help determine the fate of these characters, and gives it a little bit of replayability. But essentially, words come up on the screen and you click through it, and some of the animations may change. It's not necessarily fully animated, but it's almost like like a comic book where like there's different scenes. So you might see the same character over and over again. So that's a lot of these anime now, especially like the romance ones, especially the harem ones, are based on these visual novels, because the content's already there, and they can certainly gauge what people wanted from that, and the stories can vary a little bit. So that's a lot of fun. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I want to talk very briefly about something called Doki Doki Literature Club, which is a visual novel you can get for free on Steam, and I really recommend that you do so, because you may, and I don't want to say too much about it just because I don't want to ruin it for you, but I really have to tell people about how cool this is. And basically, it's a visual novel that presents itself as very much a stereotypical kind of romance, like a high school romance visual novel, where you might have some choices along the way. That's where the similarities end. And I will tell you that there's some content in here for people who may be sensitive to disturbing content. And I feel like I'm giving away too much right by saying that, but some of this stuff can be, if you weren't kind of prepared for it, could be shocking. But that also could be an awesome part of it. So I don't want to say too much about it other than it has some things within this game that, I don't know how many of you guys played the original Metal Gear Solid, not the NES version, but the one for PlayStation. There was a scene that a character called Psycho Mantis, had this, he was like, basically was like a psychic, And at some point he's like, I have all this psychic control, I can move things. He's like, put your controller on the floor. And he's like, I'm going to move your controller. And what they did is they did a move where they basically like maxed out the vibration function on the controller, and it like moved across the table. It was just such a cool like breaking the fourth wall moment in a video game that doesn't happen very often. Excuse me. So anyway, it has several of those types of moments where you are interacting with the game as you, not the player. And that is really cool. It adds to the kind of psychological part of it. So I know this initial review was about Boku wa Tomodachi ga Sukunai, but I can't help, I really want to touch on that, and I'd love to, especially if you've never played something like this before, I think it would be a really cool way to get into it. It's free. It takes maybe a couple hours to get through it, and again, if you're not used to a visual novel, you do some reading and things like that, but they do a good job of kind of speeding it along. There's a lot of Easter eggs. I've heard if you play it different ways, different things happen. There's randomizers in it, so everybody gets a slightly different experience. So please check it out. Let me know your experience with it. Like I said, I would totally recommend it. It got recommended to me, and I couldn't be more happy that I played it, because I feel like it's one of those experiences, those ones that, like that Metal Gear experience that everybody had and really thought it was cool. And again, a lot of fun. So on to our alcohol for the evening. And this is one that I've enjoyed for some time. It's a sake called Sayuri. Sayuri is a Nigori style sake, which it's very maybe difficult to see, but it's unfiltered. I guess you can kind of see it there. It's kind of cloudy, and in fact you have to shake it up. This is a sweet sake, enjoyed best chilled, quite cold. So if you're used to the kind of more shocking, I don't say bitter sakes, this is definitely, if you've never had sake before and you like things that are kind of sweet, this is a great introduction. You should be able to find this in most, like if you go to most sushi places, they should have this. This will be on their sweeter side. It's not exactly cheap. But this bottle actually was brought over as a flight of sakes from the same company from my friend Joey. So thank you, Joey. One of my favorites. It's just if I introduce people to sake, I usually introduce them to this, because some of the other ones can be a bit strong on the palate, and maybe just if you're not used to sake, something that pretty available. I find it, Total Wine and things like that. But again, any type of sushi place, any place that sells sushi, you should be able to get this. So I'd give it a go the next time. But it's got to be quite chilled, very cold, and that keep in the refrigerator type of thing. I'm gonna, in fact, have some right now. This sake glass, and it's bad form to pour your own sake, but of course no one's here right now. So this sake glass is actually my great-grandmother's, and she was a collector of Japanese antiques, nothing too crazy, kanpai. But this sake glass has a unique type of thing. It might just look like a normal sake glass, but if you tip it up into the light, and I don't know how much you're going to be able to see of this, I might have to get a different angle. Oops, I dripped sake all over the place. But on the inside, the cut of the ceramic is a geisha's face once it's held up to the light. So it's like as you're drinking it, you pull it away, and there's a geisha's face there. It is a cool little Easter egg on this kind of antique thing that it predates me for sure. So I saw it in the cupboard, and I thought it'd be a neat thing to share with you guys. So I'll show a picture of it with its, you can properly see it. But it's been a pleasure talking anime with you guys. Check out the Sayuri Sake. Check out both Doki Doki Literature Club and Boku wa Tomodachi ga Sukunai. It's been awesome having you guys. My name was Scott. Kanpai.